in the act of driving. You may think you are, you may be coasting. That's where most of the laws fall into, and that's where our visual system starts. So let's talk about drivers today. The number one killer of teens in this country is driving accidents. Not just distracted driving, but driving accidents. It's the number one workplace injury in the United States, car accidents. So what do we focus on? Because you can go to distracted.gov and you can read all the statistics on how and what is going on with our driving culture in the United States, but we focus very specifically on some of these numbers. At any given daylight moment in the United States, 660,000 people are distracted and driving. So they're simultaneously driving and not paying attention, all three categories. 660,000 at any given moment. Right now, same number. We're after that particular number. And this is where we focus, because those are the drivers right now not paying attention to driving. The average text is 5 seconds long. And in that 5 seconds, at 55 miles an hour, you travel the distance of a football field. Okay? Due to distracted driving, 3,154 people are killed every year, and 424,000 are injured. Out of a total of 4 million crashes in North America every year. Goldman Sachs is after this sort of issues with accidents globally, and the numbers that they are after is 500,000 people this year will die in car accidents, and 7 million people will be injured. So what are the problems specifically that we're after? People are distracted driving. People are not being focused as they're behind the wheel. They're not engaged in driving. There's many risk factors that are associated and aggravate the situation of distracted driving. That 55 miles an hour. Are you in a road that's only able to handle or has a speed maximum of 45? You know, most people aren't 55 on the highway. You know, they're 75 on a highway of 65. So there's the speeding aggravation that can be added to these sorts of accidents. So right away, there's a lot of compound factors that lead to all of these large injuries and disasters that can come from heavy equipment accidents, because that's really what we're after here. We're after people who are operating heavy equipment vehicles. So we talked a lot to law enforcement in North Carolina and around the East Coast, which the laws vary, and we wanted to hear from them what they had to say. And when it comes to catching distracted drivers, with many of the laws that are on the books currently, they have to use about 2 vehicles. Someone to get close enough to see what's going on, they have to have some sort of video capture to prove it in court, and they have to have a police officer pull over the car. So it's a large logistical issue for police departments to enforce these rules. And then there's privacy concerns. There's different sorts of apps and different sorts of technology, the red light cameras. There's other companies out there that are shooting for different issues with traffic-related incidents and laws. And the biggest thing they run into is privacy concerns. And what we do deals with privacy laws as they are. So we don't have to really change the laws, because what we're trying to do is capture on camera what you're doing and that you're breaking the law on the go. And so if you capture someone, we related this to package theft in neighborhoods. If you have a problem with people stealing packages, you might install cameras, that sort of thing, catch what's going on or who's doing it. So we're a new company, and our solution has been in pilot for a month now, and we recently actually just partnered up with the IBM Global Entrepreneur Program to help develop our software side. And what we learned is that there's 2 things we needed to cover. We needed to cover a camera system that made this work, and then we had to create a reliable evidence system where you can't tamper with the evidence. And so what we are doing is we have for our pilot programs, our passive pilot programs, we went out and got a whole bunch of camera equipment, put it into a vehicle, and tested in North Carolina. Just drove around through rush hour, got statistics, tried to understand what it's like in North Carolina, and we plan to do this throughout the East Coast, just to see how prevalent the problem is. And I can tell you it's very prevalent. It happened every day we were out. Even this may not have affected Fayetteville, but there was an announcement that WRAL did in the Greater Triangle. I'm from the Greater Triangle, and TechSting is out of the Greater Triangle, where police were going to pull you over for a mile an hour above the speed limit. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Greatly changed the culture for like 3 days. Everyone drove really, really perfectly for 3 days. And so it's definitely part of the solution is awareness. Now, they didn't start pulling people over or anything like that, but just that news press release did change driving for the week. So what we're doing is we have this camera system, we can capture what's going on, and we have a proprietary IP system right now that allows for evidence not to be tampered with. So if we have law enforcement has the cameras or some sort of citation service has the cameras, we can verify the evidence that they produce as well. So that's what we're working towards. Here's the team so far, myself. If you want to contact us, please take this information down. This is the best way to contact us right now. It is National Distracted Driver Awareness Month, and so we're presenting a lot and getting a lot of feedback and engaging with local news, etc. So if you want to contact us, this is the best way. I wouldn't call myself a serial entrepreneur. I'm a parallel entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for several years. I have a background in chemical engineering and sales and for manufacturing companies. So for me, I like solving problems, and this is one of our culture's biggest issues. And John and I are both separately entrepreneurs, and we have logistics in our company where we have to travel a lot. And we got talking, we got tinkering, and we decided that we were going to go out and solve this problem. So John is also an entrepreneur, and I do most tech stuff, and he does a lot of the business admin stuff. So what is generating revenue going to be like? The average citation cost is $125. You multiply that by the $660,000. Whether we get that in a year, whether we get that in 2 years, whatever it is, it's $82.5 million. Other companies that, for instance, do the red light cameras usually split the revenue below 50%. So they have that's their part of their revenue stream is updating, maintaining the systems, the legal that goes into the background, and all of the IT development with privacy. So we see citations as being a potential main part of what our company does, especially in the Northeast. But as the culture evolves in this country, it's how we solve driving problems. We also see the hardware, software, and grants being a major part of our business. And we have been around for just a few months, so we're pivoting in the early stages of our company. And for states that don't have distracted driving laws, we are producing an app that will help you with your phone monitor what you're doing, where you are, and keep notifications from bothering you. But that falls into the self-discipline category. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, potential competition, self-discipline. I was just mentioning. Right now, there are other companies out there that produce apps that will allow you to monitor your kids and what they're driving or where they are in the car or who's got the cell phones on. But do we do self-discipline for drunk drivers? Do we do self-discipline for major speeders and all sorts of other laws? And the answer is no. We have a police force that goes out and monitors our roads because we wouldn't want, that's the big question you have to ask yourself. Would we want, someone drunk driving to be self-disciplined all the time? And, or do we want a police officer who can capture that person, take them off the road, and prevent the deaths that could occur? So self-discipline is one area. If people do stop being distracted, that could happen. I'm very open-minded and I believe in our country. So I do think that people, and with the WRAL news thing, people are aware of this issue and they are learning. There's new potential detectors. You might ask me, why did I put potential up there twice? Because there's been stories out there where the radar companies that supply law enforcement equipment were creating radar for cell phones. I've contacted pretty much all of them, and this device doesn't exist. And there's a few reasons why it doesn't exist, and there were privacy concerns, and it became viral recently. But it's actually was something that was being developed 2 or 3 years ago. So that never really came through. The legislation is the big issue. How do communities want to solve this problem? The communities that go to citations, we have the hardware and the software, and the communities that don't have the citations, we have the software. So we can work in every state, But the question is really, what does the community want and what do the laws permit? So the tech roadmap, how are we gonna get there? Well, we've been doing a passive system. We bought a bunch of other people's equipment, kind of put it together, glued it together, soldered things, and we have a system that can see people from the tops of their legs to above their heads in the car, and we can go 3 lanes over. So if a law enforcement vehicle was driving down the road, it would be able to detect this on the go. So that's what we have. It's a passive system. We're trying to develop it in-house right now, and we're creating the IP behind both the software and the hardware systems. I'm a patented inventor, and we have a really interesting way of solving the digital evidence issue with software. And so we're working with IBM on that. They are not necessarily helping us develop, but they are giving us access to systems and whatnot. And integrating it and distributing it. So with the distribution, every state's different again. So some states may want to have a website portal that they run, or they may want to have a portal that we run. So that's what that's coming down to. And so getting to the next level, what do I need help with? What can you help me with? You know, where are we going? We need to meet and continue the conversation with local law enforcement. We have to understand what is going on and who is already trying to solve it and what they're doing and what they've learned. We want to talk to you guys. I want to hear back from what your opinions are on distracted driving, what you see out there. That plays a huge role in what we're trying to do. Angel investor, that is going to be changed to partner. If there's people who are trying to solve this problem that you know and you want to introduce us, etc., we are looking for people to partner and grow. And lastly, any questions?
I still do not understand how this is going to work.
Okay.
The thing here is I'm driving down the road, I'm a cop, was a cop, past tense. Now, what is this supposed to do? I understand the purpose,
Yeah.
I understand the end result, but how do we detect it? Can you give me some ideas what you want
So
us to
if the
do?
laws
I mean,
are hands-free,
what was this?
if the law states hands-free, okay, and your hands are off the wheel, and you are holding on to a device or a sandwich or whatever it is, and the law says that you can't do that, we can capture that video.
How? I guess that's my wordage.
So there's two ways, it's a great question. And since these are in pilot programs, we're developing them, but they've come down to 2. If it's in a law enforcement vehicle, okay, the system goes into the passenger window area. And if it's not in a law enforcement vehicle, if it's in a citation company, a company that would do the civil event stuff, so not a traffic infraction, but a citation, you would have the same system. And an Uber driver, our original idea is someone who's driving a lot, a business owner, someone who has to be on the roads, could have this system. And what it does is it checks multiple angles. And what we get is multiple shots of the situation happening. Finding DAs and finding prosecutors to move this forward is where we are right now. And that's exactly where we are. So what is the sweet spot? What do they really need? That they're coming to us and we're working with them. So that's the hardware system. The software side of it, to make sure that the driver can't tamper with the evidence, is something we are also working with, and is intellectual property. So I can't speak as much to it, but that's a huge problem. And right now, they have to use film systems. So with a lot of the body camera stuff that's going on, they have a film database, and they can check any digital thing that happened based on the film that's in a warehouse. So that's a system in place. Yes.
So how do they differentiate between somebody, say, using the GPS on their phone versus, you know, texting or something on their,
Okay,
else on their phone?
that is the legislation issue. If it is legal for you to take selfies of yourself and not legal for you to text, that's where we have trouble with that. So with the hands-free laws, that's basically how we go around that. So
But I
in
mean,
North Carolina.
GPS is I'm talking about. If I'm using GPS to get from here to Wilmington or, you know, someplace,
Well, if you're
I'm using my phone.
If you're using your radio, if you're using a device that's implanted somewhere, yeah, that's, your hands are on the wheel and you're looking forward, that's fine. And even if you're looking at the GPS, your hands are on the wheel. That's the big part of it. If you're using the GPS like this, then the law may allow us to write the citation on that. So that's the difference.
So the GPS on your phone has to be hands-free as well?
if that's what the law says. So every state is
Does
different,
the
there's
law
about,
say that?
yeah,
No, I don't think it addresses GPS.
in North Carolina, we don't have pretty
Right.
much anything.
Yeah, just the
but-
texting, I think.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's just the texting aspect, isn't it, on the phone? That's the only thing I've heard of anyways.
Nothing in North Carolina. There's really very little on the books in North Carolina, actually, and that's the interesting part. I've talked to several different departments, law enforcement departments about this, and you know, there's a what do we do situation. So what we're doing is we're taking the statistics and we're doing the research, and we're saying, hey, this is, you know, look how many almost horrible accidents has just occurred. And even for myself, as I drive around and do some of this, I have other business experience and things that I develop on the background, and I have to drive everywhere. And it's, I mean, if you're a driver and you put miles in a vehicle every year, I did sales for 5 years, had to put a lot of miles on a vehicle. It's been getting worse. The statistics are 10,000 extra accidents in North Carolina, like year after year, starting with 200,000 in 2010, and it's like 240,000 now. So it's growing, and it's an issue. So it'll evolve.
So comparatively to the states that have the laws, what's the difference? You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh.
Sorry.
What's the difference? Because I feel like even coming from Massachusetts and Connecticut, these laws have been on the books for a while, but it's hard to enforce them. And they seem to, like, even when you take it to court, there's sort of, when you include privacy and so many other things,
Yeah.
it's hard to
So
sort
with the
of
law
balance.
enforcement issue, that's part of what we're trying to solve. It's just logistically takes a lot of resources for law enforcement to go out there and enforce this. You know, like littering. You know, there's a bunch of laws out there that take away from their time in solving serious crime. So that's one of the things we're trying to fix. When it comes to the citation versus infractions,
Right.
which is, I think, part of what you're asking too,
Right.
is how do you enforce citations? And the answer is somewhat. You know, you have to find the DAs and the people out there to champion enforcing it. And there may be spells where they enforce it very strictly. You know, it's kind of what North Carolina said through WRAL, and the very gently, is we're gonna be paying very hardcore attention to the roads for this month. And so that's kind of a program that they may have, and that's what we're working with Boston.
And then what is do you know sort of statistically what the difference is with states that don't have the laws on the books and those that do? Is there a huge improvement in distracted driving accidents and all these things?
North Carolina is our pilot example for that.
Oh, okay.
And what we're doing is we're just going to them and showing them the research. And if you don't want these laws on the books, you don't get them. That's the thing. It's the great part about the community side of this. Like, for what we're trying to do is not a broad, it's the red light camera system. We're not trying to put these cameras everywhere. What we're trying to do is help law enforcement and the community reduce distracted driving or driving incidents by 50%. We're really trying to get injuries down, so awareness is a huge part of it.
So you're saying that your technology is going to be cameras placed in strategic places, or is it going to be within the police vehicle?
Okay, so it could go either way. It depends on the law, but right now it would be the same camera system, and it's a variation on the action cameras like GoPro. Okay, and what we've designed is just a very simple, cheap system that captures that straight shot. When you're driving, okay, you see people whether they're distracted or not. We're getting it from your point of view. So it's a point of view camera, and it basically emulates that. So,
And you also mentioned awareness, like the
Correct.
awareness for the 1 mile an hour speed limit. So if your technology came to fruition, do you think that awareness would adversely affect your bottom line?
okay, that's a great question. So that goes back to our competition where I put self-discipline up there. So when it comes to the hardware and software in the long run, we see these autopilot vehicles. I don't know if you've seen what Tesla's doing right now. These vehicles require an awareness of other vehicles on the road. So we are actually seeking a way to do that, to monitor other vehicles. So the growth in the long run is really creating safer driving technology. in the short run, we're trying to stop this particular issue. So we want to expand that way. And I'm sorry, what was the second, I think you had a second question in that? Or the revenue?
Do you think that the awareness?
Oh, okay, so,
becoming
sorry.
aware would adversely affect your bottom line?
That's a great question. The red light cameras versus what we're doing. Nobody's really addicted to driving through red light cameras. 66% of Americans can't put their cell phone down. So is awareness and self-discipline going to solve the issue? That's why I brought up alcohol earlier, okay? Enforcement's gonna have to play a role. I mean, back to the Goldman Sachs number, 7 million people, the 500,000 dead. Okay, it's hard to understand, but 7 million people have a terrifying injury now for the rest of their lives. I mean, so that has to play a role in what people are deciding on the roads. And are we going to take drunk driving off the books and just ask people to stop drinking? So and distracted driving is now being compared to drunk driving. So that's what we're after. And in the meantime, the citations really seem like the way to go in certain states, and the self-discipline may be the way to go in others.
One of the problems, everything you're talking about, I like. The police officers are going to be, it would help them tremendously. The problem that we were going to run across is chain of custody. So if you put it into a civilian's hands, you're going to have a legality of chain of custody of who maintains it. How does it get to court? And if I say to this man, he was, because my camera in my car catches him, does your company pay for my legal expenses if he sues me for taking pictures of him? Because we know that it takes very little to bring a case to court. Now, I'm looking at it from two standards. Law enforcement, great. But if you're asking anybody outside of law enforcement, where's the civil liability?
Right.
What will your company do to protect me against these people? Because I'm seeing lawsuits left and right. We've seen that with the stoplights. There were tons of lawsuits. That's why they put it on hold, and they took it off for a while. And some got rid of it because they couldn't stand the court cases, or the amount of time in court. Your thoughts?
Okay, so my thoughts on that are actually similar to, the red light cameras do tie into, I guess, the enforcement fate of what we're trying to do, without a doubt. And what they have is a certification process, and I'm very familiar with New York's, where they will have an officer, someone who's certified to tell that an infraction has occurred at the computer and reviewing your case. So it's not completely automated. And there is someone who checks what's going on. So we really feel like we have to mimic that system too, to make sure that there is guidance going on and that the drivers can't interrupt each other. But as far as the driver liability is concerned, we don't take the driver liability. The driver signs up to contract and do that. So can we be sued? Anyone can be sued.
Can we win? And it
Can
sounds
we
like
win?
your case would be easy to win.
Well, I think that's what we're
That's the part you want
against
to
or
look
for.
into.
What?
That's the part that you want to look into as you grow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Also, we looked into privacy laws in North Carolina, and you are basically allowed to record as long as you're in the recording. That's part of one of the things that.
No, that's not true. North Carolina law says if any member of the public can see what any other person can see, that is open, i.e., when you walk by a car, anybody who looks in the car, that's open.
Yeah.
If you look across and you see a park, that's open.
Correct.
So if we have cameras taking it.
Yeah.
So the issue I'm seeing is privacy laws, as this young lady brought up. Your car is not a private entity.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And most things, maybe I misunderstood your.
No, I think we're agreeing with the stance of disagreement.
Sure.
Yeah. So yes, we're not breaking any privacy laws.
Okay, because I don't want anybody thinking that you are by doing what you're doing, because I'm supporting what you're doing.
Yeah, no. And I appreciate that too, and I appreciate your concern. The way we're approaching this right now in North Carolina is fine. And from our legal counsel, that's exactly what we heard. I'm not talking about recording in private, of course. And if you're driving in private, that would be really cool to have a private racetrack. But, so thank you. But yeah, any other?
How do you have to have multiple cameras?
Do we have to have
You
multiple?
would have to have multiple cameras, because you can't record the person, you can take the shot of the person, but you can't identify who that person is without catching the license plate.
Yeah, so we actually get both in what we're doing. You
I
can
mean,
get the license.
It has to, I mean,
Yeah.
then, I mean, how do you understand because the driver then has to either go alongside, so their passenger window is viewing the driver of the vehicle, and then either pull in front of them or behind them, then to get the shot of the license plates.
Yeah, so that's actually, we
And
don't
is
have to
that-
do that. And we're patenting the system that we have right now, so I can't say how exactly that doesn't have to occur, but you don't have to change how you drive whatsoever. This system, that's why, even going back to the autopilot with Tesla, this system monitors the vehicles around. And so what Tesla does right now is if someone just plows straight into you, the car knows how far it can move over before, so it doesn't go off the road, and it makes internal decisions. We're not doing the internal decisions, we're doing the, okay, something's coming at you. But when it comes to capturing the license plate and capturing the act, there is a way to do it, and it works very, very well. That's all I can say on that, so. And if you go home and you buy a GoPro Hero 3, it's good enough to pretty much be a dash cam and get license plates and see what drivers are doing and all that sort of stuff. So you can get it, and I highly recommend getting a dash cam. People are so much nicer to me when I drive around. And I live in a town that Scarborough is extremely dense, and rush hour is very hard to pull in and out of places, and people wave. I mean, it's just, it helps enforce that you're there to protect their safety, your safety, and you're there to drive, you know, so people like that message, most of the time.
What do you do with this, if you have a GoPro, which I have a GoPro?
What do you do with it?
Yeah,
Okay, you don't wanna obstruct your view, okay, so
I know with the video, once you have that, if you capture something, you know, that was the biggest thing I found is, you know, you can't upload it to law enforcement, there's, you know, it's very difficult to
So,
do anything with on a real-time basis.
creating a reliable evidence trail. Okay, we are creating a software application with IBM right now, and again, it's on their systems, and we're developing it with their stuff, that will try to solve that problem and walk away from film. Because if let's say you have your camera on, and someone gets shot in the parking lot, some other crime happens, okay? How is that admissible evidence to what's going on? So that's gonna be different, especially with the crime that I just mentioned, in every case. But there are companies out there that are trying to solve that problem and make it a more secure, reliable source for evidence. So that's what we're trying to do. And again, we're early in that mission.
So can we upload something to your
Yes.
company? Okay,
That's where we wanna be. We wanna get to that point.
how soon?
Hopefully within the next month or so with our pilot. So everything is manual right now because of the pilots that we're trying to get off the ground. And that's been what's different about this company and this product is that we're not just going to a consumer retail market. We have to make sure that there's something that can come out of this capture. So that's part of the process. And I have to be, as I've traveled and presented, I've talked with law enforcement, and I've heard lots of, and there are lots of people who see this problem and want to solve it. So we have to continue to grow as a community as well. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that conversation going. So that's part of it. Any other questions? Yes,
So
sir.
you're saying that the overall concept is that cameras are out there in different cars and they're taking pictures of actions in other cars. And so what do? Send them a citation in the mail, or they stop them and give them a ticket? How does that work?
Yeah, so every process for every state is going to have a different process for that. That's pretty much what it looks like. And for the fixed installation with red light cameras in the Northeast, the process I was talking about earlier, where it goes to a officer or someone certified in understanding and seeing that something has happened, then sends it out to you. And what you can do there is you get a picture of you doing it, and you can log into the website and you can watch the video feed of you blowing the red light. So there will be very analogous.
So in North Carolina, you said there weren't any laws against texting while driving? Cell phone? You said there is. There is.
I was talking to a police department in Chapel Hill, and as far as enforcing it is concerned, he was talking about home rule or that the cities are trying to do it and that they really can't. So there's just some dilemma in North Carolina when it comes to truly enforcing it. So that's what I know. And
The one part that they're doing is, when there is an accident, they will confiscate the telephones to determine what was going on at a specific time. But for them to run up and down the street,
Yeah.
they're on the phone just as much or playing on their computer. So they're not really looking for you looking texting when they're actually doing it on a big computer.
Well, the police officers have
It's there.
something called an MDT, a mobile data terminal, and so they have different rules for driving around. And so when it comes to catching a police officer, has he broken the law? And that's the real big question that you have to ask. They have different rules for police officers than they do for the rest of us, so, that is. Yes, sir.
I've seen where police officers went over the speed
I'm sorry?
limit. I've seen where police officers go over the speed limit and
Well, sometimes if you're having a heart attack, they gotta get you quickly, so.
they haven't had the sirens on.
Yeah, and I don't think that they always have to, but I don't know. And I'll tell you this: body cameras. Let's talk about body cameras for a second. On that note, we don't. If we go this route and we reduce distracted driving, we don't have to break into your phone. We don't have to figure out who you were texting, all that stuff going on. We stop it before it happens, and we can eliminate some of the other driving perils that occur with all of the community and police officers included, because we want to help save their lives too.
So what can we do for you as far as, help,
If you know local law enforcement that you could network me with, if you know people who want to solve this problem, or if you want to write later on and give me your feedback on the presentation as well, I would totally appreciate that. So those are some of the things.
Do you have a website? I didn't see any.
Texting.org.
Texting.
Texting.org. Or sorry, I'll put it up. And we went .org because it's what Craigslist pretty much does. They have a go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna wait till she was done. I
What?
was gonna wait till she was done.
Oh, okay.
What if you actually connect the camera to the actual car, so where the car sees that you're doing it and actually can send the video?
That's a good question. The goal was to give the driver the point of view. Okay, one of the things that we discussed, John, my partner, and I, was that we are drivers, and we see other drivers, and we see them not paying attention. So was there something we could do that would allow the data or the pictures of the driver's point of view to come across? So when you see these big cameras that are up and on telephone poles and whatnot, they don't get the same angle that the driver does. And we're also not just trying to stop a specific thing happening, we're trying to stop a general thing happening, which is accidents that occur from distracted driving. So if you see someone that is distracted, we want to be able to give you something you can do about that. Good question.
Well, isn't it sad that in our society, we have to come up with gizmos to cater to our irresponsibility and not paying attention? That's, in essence, that's where we are right now. Because has our society now really stopped holding each person responsible for their own actions? And
Well,
it
not in
looks
New
like
England.
it.
Not in New England when it comes to distracted driving, or blowing red lights. And it's even in Raleigh, there's some red light cameras there. The gizmos thing, to create things that help us use other things safer. Seatbelts. We went through this with seatbelts in cars. And we're going through another major cultural shift. There's a major uptick in accidents right now. And there's going to be something that comes through to help us protect ourselves. Engineering can do it, so I'm pretty hopeful on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that comparison out now. When you go in a woodworking shop and you take woodworking classes, the first thing they teach you is shop safety. Put your glasses on, keep your eye on the saw you have, because you may cut your finger off if you don't pay attention. So if they put a person in a car, wouldn't it first of all be the most important thing to teach that person? You are dealing with actual weapon now. You can kill yourself and you can kill other people if you don't pay attention. So it goes far back to the basics, how to teach people to be responsible, because what we are doing now, I mean, your concept is super, it's great, but what we are doing actually is, we are going to create a gizmo to teach people, to help people to get around they are not being responsible, you know? So
That's what
in
it is.
essence, that's what this is all boiling to, because people don't, this attention deficit disorder is so wonderfully played
Well-
out, so that now we have to have gizmos to help people along to get around the irresponsibility factor.
Well, and you know, it's heavy, you're operating heavy equipment. One of the things you'll notice in this presentation is that you didn't see any pictures of car accidents. You didn't see any pictures of the really terrible things that occur, because a car accident is one of the most brutal, ways to be hurt. And what we're trying to do with TechSting is show a future where we can help prevent that sort of, and enforce what's going on. As far as getting the message across as well too, with that heavy equipment, we were thinking of doing a driver awareness commercial, and I'll play this out for you guys because we haven't done it yet. But we want to get the point across that it's heavy equipment, and we were thinking of coming up with like a fake warehouse and having stunt drivers on forklifts on their phone, you know, just to humorously show that you can't do that. You can't operate a forklift with a phone. There's no one would think, you know, the woodworking example that you were talking about, you wouldn't do that with a large machine. Well, your vehicle is 3,000 pounds at least, you know, so you're breaking that barrier there. So that's a good point.
Ed?
Go ahead.
What's the comparison to other countries as far as texting and distracted driving? I don't know if I missed that.
So, the numbers. As far as what the cultures are, I have been in Europe and North Africa, and enforcing driving laws around the world is very different. We have a much more, I would say, compliant culture here. So as far as the statistics on injuries though, it's 50,000, it's 45 to 50,000 people a year die in the United States, with 4 million injured. And that, the 4 million is Canada included, but 50,000 in the United States. Worldwide, it's 500,000 that die. So you see a few million more are injured, but a lot more are killed. And it's disproportionately bicyclists and pedestrians as well. So pedestrians also get the brunt of those statistics.
I know they're starting to put cameras on the side of cars as well. Is that some kind of technology that you could tap into? I mean, that, you know, could take.
We're hoping they'll tap into our technology. That is being aware, creating an awareness system in the hardware of the car is what you want. There's a great example is Tesla. It just came out with a video of some utility truck that pulled straight into an autopilot Tesla, and the car was able to avoid the accident. So, and it reacts very quickly. And what if you fall asleep? What if something happens that you couldn't, you know, a medical illness, something overcomes you? I mean, can the car pull itself over and shut down? I mean, so that's the future, without a doubt.